All right, so today I'm gonna be doing my first flight with this. This is the Kolas 6 from Axis Flying. It's a drone that literally nobody had asked for. It's a foldable drone. That's an FPV drone. It's a 5-inch foldable long-range drone. And I'm gonna be doing my first flight, and I'll give you some commentary about what I think of this, and we'll just talk about whether or not you should purchase this, because yeah, it is super weird. Let's get started. So first initial thoughts is that this flies actually pretty solid. I'm getting really great range, and the fact that it just absolutely sips the battery is pretty amazing. Like, I felt like I was flying for 5-6 minutes easy without even trying, and when I looked at the battery, I still had like 23.5 volts, which I could have kept flying for another 2 minutes or so. So if you're looking for something that is very, very power efficient, I will say straight out of the gate, even with the GoPro bones on here, it's pretty power efficient. All right, let's get back to the studio so we can talk about all the little nitty-gritty details. Alrighty, so we're back in the studio, and I'm going to give you some final thoughts on the Kolas 6 long-range foldable FPV drone. It's quite a mouthful if you ask me. So this is a weird design for me. This is just weird because it's not something essentially anybody is looking for, especially in a 5-inch package. But really quickly, let's just go over the specifications on this so you sort of understand which one I'm using here. So this one is designed for 6S. It has 1633 kV motors. These are the AF223 Axis Flying motors. And I will say the motors are quite smooth, very impressed with the motors. It does have an all-in-one F7 flight controller. So underneath here, if you flip this lid up, you'll actually see there is a flight controller, and I'll just bring it up to the camera here so we can get a closer look at that. So it's sort of hard to see in there. It's buried down deep in the butthole of this drone. There it is. So there it is. That's the all-in-one flight controller, which means the ESC and flight controller is built onto one board. Now there's pros and cons to having a all-in-one flight controller. The first pro would be that it saves space. A con is that you have ESC and flight controller. If one fails, both of them go and you have to replace the entire board. The other thing when you have a all-in-one flight controller ESC is the noise from the ESC sometimes transcends into the flight controller. Although I really didn't see that happening with this build, it is a potential and it could essentially happen. All right, let's talk about what VTX is in here, because this has a Caddx Vista with the Nebula Pro camera. And honestly, it just looks like any other Caddx Vista. Latency was good, the range was good, it flew fine. I really didn't notice any sort of issues with overheating. So how do you access the Caddx Vista for updates or even the flight controller? Well, on the right side of this build, you have two USB-C ports. So up top, we have the port for the flight controller, and then recessed deep down in here is where you'll access your Caddx Vista should you need to do any sort of firmware updates. On the left-hand side of this quad, we have an XT60 plug, which it's really nice because you don't have to worry about any of your balance leads hitting these motors because they are far enough away. So I think that is pretty cool. One other thing about this obviously is because it is a foldable drone, how do you fold this up? Well, you have these little tabs here and here. And if you yank up on these tabs ever so slightly, doesn't take a lot of force to be honest with you, they will just fold these arms down. So I'm gonna go ahead and fold all these arms in, and we'll fold that one down. We'll fold this one down and fold this one down. Now, with them folded, this sort of looks like something straight out of Star Wars. Looks like one of the ATs. I mean, all you need is Chewbacca yelling, and then you'll be good. That was a really shitty Chewbacca impression. You can also take the antenna straight out and just slide it down underneath here if you want to make it much more compact. Obviously, we have the Hero 10 bones on here, so we can just flop that down if we need it to. But it does take up very little space, and you can just throw it in the bag and not really worry about much. Batteries, the batteries will go in up top here on the side, basically running vertical, and you can fit anything from a 1200 to a 1700 milliamp hour battery. Now, during my test, I had a 1300 milliamp hour battery, and I was getting roughly about 8 minutes of flight out of this little guy, which I think was pretty impressive. The lower KV on these motors really do mean that it's going to sip battery quite well. Another question I know that will get asked is whether or not this design introduces any sort of vibrations into the build. And that answer is going to be not that I noticed, but again, this isn't going to be necessarily something you're going to buy for freestyle. This is going to be more of a cruiser or something that you're going to possibly use to film or chase something. Where I can see this being a great candidate is for a chase drone. Like if I wanted to chase maybe a drift car or a vehicle or get close to something, that's where I think that something like this would do really well at a distance. Because it's so power efficient, I don't have to worry about landing and changing out the batteries. But I will say that it does feel quite rigid, with the exception of this right rear arm. That's the only thing that feels sort of loose or that I would have any concern. But I'm pretty sure that that is just simply tightening it up, tightening. I need to tighten the fucking bolt on this to make it feel a little more rigid. But other than that, I think it's fine. Now, I did take a good crash with this earlier today, and I didn't see any problem after crashing. And I crashed because air mode was not enabled on this quad. And because air mode wasn't on, the quad was getting really, really loose at 0 throttle maneuvers. So when I brought it back to the studio, I turned air mode on, took it out for another flight, and I found that it flew just fine. So just know that when you get one of these, if you buy one pre-built, it will come with air mode off by default. So you will need to turn that on. Now, landing without air mode on is really super simple, and it lands quite nicely. But with air mode on, I did notice that this thing bobbles around quite a bit. So be careful when landing, because you will go through props quite easily. The good thing is if you buy this pre-built from Axis, you are going to get enough of props in the box, so destroying a few isn't going to necessarily hurt anything. But all in all, I'm pretty impressed with this. I am very, very happy with the way this flew. I mean, really, what more can you ask for something that nobody asked Axis to make? I mean, this is just a strange design. I hope this is just a beta test for possibly larger versions of this. I would love to see like a 6-inch or 7-inch version of this, possibly, maybe even a Cinelifter frame like this where they fold. I think that would be pretty cool. To me, that would be a lot more useful than something like this. But anyways, there will be a link down in the description below if you want to check one of these out for yourself. It is not an affiliate link. I don't do any sort of FPV affiliate links like that. But as always, stay original. I'll see you in the next video, and stay flying.
I heard they checking for me, no one checking on me, so I had to go run up a check. I got the message on me, ain't no flexing on me, my attorney gon' call and collect. Blessings on blessings for me, my successes only made them envious, they got upset. I had to put all their egos in check. I want the money, the pride, respect.